So again, my name is Scott Malloy. For those who arrived late, I'm a senior career advisor at the RISD Career Center, joined by my colleague, Alan Tracy here tonight. And this is a session about how you can build your professional network. And through that, how you can make connections that are going to be positive and impactful throughout your career. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So I am curious. I think it's always a good way to start any kind of talk or presentation to just get a feel for who's in the room. It's always helpful for us to know who's here. So we would love to, if you can take a few moments, respond to the poll that just showed up on your screen. Let us know who you are, and we'll give a few seconds for that to populate. Awesome. Yeah, this has been really great to see for so many of our talks, such a nice balance between current students and also alumni. It's a really amazing thing to see that mix. And I think also, when it comes to questions, perhaps we'll see some nice, interesting questions that are reflective of both the student experience and the alumni experience. So that's really good to see. If you are a student, I am also kind of curious to know what level you are as well. Yeah, thanks. Same here, really awesome mix from first year undergraduate students, actually looking like that's the majority of the group. Good for you, first year students, really, trying to think through how to approach networking and get a handle on networking early on in your college career. That's super impressive. Hats off to you, as they say. But then, even though that might be our majority, we certainly have a great mix of undergrad and a real solid population of grad students as well. And the moral, behind this, I'm glad this is good information for me to know and for us to have. But the other thing that's important to note about this is that networking is something that you all can do, whether you are a student, whether you are an alum, whether you're a first year undergrad or a final year grad student who's about to graduate, or anything in between. Networking is useful and helpful for you, and it's a part of your career development and a part of your kind of career toolkit that you should be working on and should be starting to do really since your first day in college and building onward into your your career once you graduate. So I think that this is great to see that there's such a diverse mix here, because it is something that you can do and make a part of your career development pretty much forever. So thanks for taking that time. There we go. So just to kind of set the stage here for what we're going to cover and what the agenda is for tonight. So we're going to talk about, first and foremost, what is the value of networking? Why should you even network to begin with? Why is it something that you should be doing? We're also going to talk a little bit about what's the etiquette around reaching out to other professionals and how can you craft your networking outreach. One of the most common questions that I get as a career advisor is, what do I say? What can I say when I reach out to other professionals? And so we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about what's the best way to structure that kind of a message. And then we'll also talk about some key resources and key tools that you can utilize to help you network. And especially, now during the pandemic and during these challenging times, oftentimes a lot of networking is happening, online via Zoom and things like that. So what are the online resources that are going to be helpful for you as you're building your network? We'll definitely go into some key ones and break down how you can use them. So speaking of the value of networking, why you should do this, I think it's important to first start with whether you are a first year student or you're an alum who's in the audience, you're a part of this greater RISD community. And I think that's a really important thing to sort of just understand and recognize and kind of take stock of, because by being a student or being an alum of this institution, you join a community of current students as well as 30,000 living alumni around the world. And the alumni that come out of this institution are just incredibly talented people doing amazing things with their art and design talents, things that you can't even dream of, right? And I think it's incredible to just know that that resource is there for you, and in some sense is already a part of your network. So when you see people and alums like a fashion entrepreneur and fashion icon like a Nicole Miller, or a MacArthur Genius Award-winning artist like Kara Walker, or somebody like Dale Chihuly, who is an icon in the world of glass art and sort of a kind of a godfather of that realm as well, or a major installation artist and award-winning artist like a Jenny Holzer, or somebody who's a bit more of a recent graduate, an amazing freelance illustrator like a Marley Gallardo, who has done client work for people like Netflix and Apple and the New York Times, and is also, I believe, actually teaching at RISD this semester, teaching in class, which is an amazing thing. And we definitely welcome her back. She's an awesome person. To a mega tech entrepreneur and founder or co-founder of Airbnb, like Joe Gebbia, who graduated from graphic design and industrial design, to somebody like Yalitza Jean Charles, who again is an entrepreneur in her own right, actually recently featured on Good Morning America, talking about her company, Healthy Roots Dolls, which creates and makes dolls for young girls of color to try to empower them and teach them natural hair care techniques. And really just, again, an amazing person who's using her design skills and her illustration skills to make the world a better place. In a similar vein, somebody like a Shepard Fairey, who is a major icon when it comes to street art as well as activist art, and again, kind of using their art and design talents to try to make social impact and make the world a slightly better place than when they left it. The point with this, I'm not just highlighting amazing alumni just to do it, though it is fun to kind of talk about what they've accomplished. These are people that are already in your network. You just may not know it yet, but these people are absolutely, as RISD alumni, they've shared the same experience that you've had, right? Or a very similar one, at least. They've gone through the same foundation experience. They've gone through the same classes. They've experienced RISD in a very similar way. And so you already share that connection. And to some extent, the only thing that's preventing you from, reaching out and engaging with them is just you taking that step and willing to put yourself out there a little bit. And so that's just something I want you to keep in mind. And I'll reiterate it a little bit throughout the talk and talk about it at the end. But be fearless, reach out to people that inspire you and reach out to people that you feel a kinship with and a connection with. And the beauty of being at RISD is that you have potentially 30,000 of those people surrounding you on the planet Earth, which is really, really cool. Excuse me. So I also want to take a second real quick to do another poll. So the other reason, aside from cool access to amazing alumni, the other reason why I want to talk about networking really mattering and being an important thing is that it actually is very useful in a practical sense as far as how people find work. So I'm curious to hear responses. What do you think for what the percentage of jobs that are found via networking and referrals are? Great, so people are already responding. Yeah. Gonna give everybody a chance. We've got about almost full response rate. Getting up there, almost. So let's see. Great, everybody's responded. So what do we think? Is it 25? Not 25. Is it 50%? Not 50%, and the majority of you did actually get this right. I'm very, very proud of you all. You're all here, so you inherently kind of knew that networking was important, so I think you had a good instinct on answering this question. But the answer is indeed, according to this study, at least by the Adler Group, where they surveyed 3,000 people who had recently, found a new position, 85% said they acquired that position through networking or personal referrals. Now, that may be a little on the high side. I've seen other surveys that are not quite so high. Usually I've seen things ranging from between 60, 70, or as high as 80, 85, like you're seeing here. But I think any way you cut it, most of the data points to the fact that this is the majority, well over 50% of how people find work. What's interesting about that is I actually think, even though it is the majority of how people find work, not every job seeker does a great job of incorporating networking into their job search and just into their kind of, day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month life as a professional, even though it has huge, immense value. And so I think that that's just something you want to take with you from this talk, that this is absolutely something you need to be investing time in. And we'll talk about how you can break it down. You can build it into a, you can develop a plan for yourself where you can make it digestible and take little chunks and work on this over time. But it's definitely worthwhile activity, even though it doesn't always feel as direct as I see this job opportunity on Indeed or on LinkedIn and I'm going to apply to it, right? That feels much more direct. We can see the end of the line. We can see the outcome there when we do that. But even though this is networking tends to be a little bit more of a wavy line, this is absolutely something that's going to prove valuable to you in finding opportunities and positions throughout your professional life. So thanks everybody for taking the time to respond to that. So we know that networking is valuable, at least in the sense that it can lead to opportunities, which is of course very, very important. I think it's really important to think about what networking is as well. What is it at its core? And I think there's some people out there that have kind of a negative feeling or a negative reaction to networking, right? Like they hear networking and they go, that doesn't feel real. That doesn't feel right. That's not me. That's not something I want to do. And I understand that. I truly do. As somebody who is a little introverted myself, sometimes putting myself out there and meeting new people and talking, again, like putting yourself out there and talking about yourself or talking about things you're passionate about, it can feel uneasy sometimes. But when you think about what networking really is, it's really about finding a community of like-minded people, like-minded professionals who share the same passions as you, share the same professional interests, skill sets. They want to apply their art and design skill sets in similar ways and impact the world in similar ways. That's just kind of like finding your professional friend group when you think about it. So when you start to think about it like that networking can kind of be like finding your people in a sense. It starts to feel less, it can start to feel less icky and start to feel like actually a really natural kind of fun thing to do. So I think that's an important reframe for everybody out there to just kind of think of it like that. And I truly believe that that's what it is when it's done well. But there also are some reasons to do it just in the sense that it can, bring you some important advantages. And throughout your career, I think it's important to know that LinkedIn networking can provide you advantages really in two key ways, probably more than just two, but these are the kind of two key ways I think about it. And one is an advantage in relevant knowledge. And what I mean by that is by talking with other professionals and learning about their roles, learning about what they do in their companies, learning about the skills that they apply in their work life or to the projects they're working on. That's knowledge that you can use as a job seeker to your advantage, because then you can start to incorporate that knowledge into your applications, into your portfolios, into how you respond to questions in interviews. It makes you a better applicant. Networking has the potential to teach you things and even help you gain skills that maybe you wouldn't have had before. So over the course of your career, it actually makes you a better professional and a stronger applicant for opportunities because you learn things that you may not have learned otherwise. The other advantage is it's an advantage in potential access to opportunity. So this kind of connects to the point we're making about the 85%, but not all jobs are posted. This is especially true, I think, for like freelance work. Sometimes freelance work is a little bit more word of mouth. And so you may not find that posted on an online job board. It might be shared via networks or shared via people who are doing similar work or know each other through prior company connections. So sometimes networking is actually the way you would hear about a freelance gig or a contract role that you might not have heard about otherwise. But even if it's not that kind of explicit, sometimes just knowing somebody at a company is useful because they may be able to give you a heads up about an opening or about a position that might be opening up soon that you may not have heard about otherwise, or you may have heard about later on. You wouldn't have as much time to prepare, so on and so forth. So sometimes these relationships and the network that you build can provide access to opportunity that you may not have had just if you were only searching online, like via Indeed and other methods that we were talking about before. I also want to take a minute to, again, kind of think about what networking really is. And I really do view it as really at its core about learning and sharing. And I have on the screen here just some examples of the types of questions you can ask. And I've broken it down on the left-hand side. You're seeing questions that, quote unquote, design professional or a design student might ask. And then questions on the right-hand side about what a fine art professional or fine art student might ask, or somebody who's leaning towards that type of career path. I'm making some generalizations here and some assumptions, but you can see from these question sets that if you take networking as a way to learn from seasoned professionals and learn from people who may have a little bit more experience in a certain realm than you do, it's a great opportunity for you to become a better applicant for whatever industry or whatever career path you're interested in. So on the design side, you can ask things about like, what types of projects do designers at your, Studio X or Blank Studio work on? Learn more about what work they're producing and what kinds of things they're doing. What skill sets are most valuable for designers to have at your company? Again, that helps you formulate what you highlight on a resume or what you might talk about in an interview. What tips do you have for designing a portfolio in the industrial design, UI, UX, furniture industry? That way you can craft the best possible portfolio and the best possible application materials possible. This is a nice one too. I think it's general, but like, what do you wish you knew starting out as a designer? So if you're, a student right now and you're about to graduate, or even if you're younger, it's nice to connect with professionals and ask them if they had advice that they wish they knew when they were in school. That can maybe make your connection from school to the professional world just a little bit easier. And on the fine art side, again, generalizing a bit, but if you're a fine artist who plans to be a studio artist and you're hoping to show your work in galleries, talking with people who run galleries and are engaged in that kind of work, you can ask them, what do you look for in the artists that you show or represent? What are the qualities or the type of work that you look for, or even just characteristics in artists that they typically work with and represent? What's helpful? What makes for a strong grant or residency application? You can reach out and engage and network with people, grant organizations, people who run grant organizations, or residency directors, people who run residency programs, and ask them questions about what do they look for in candidates when they're reviewing applications. And that, again, helps you become a stronger applicant. What advice, again, a bit more general, what advice do you have for an emerging artist like me? I think, again, those kinds of kind of wide open questions about, what's good to do when you're young in your career, that can help get you out on the right foot. I think those are good questions to ask too. And similar, what are the most important things I should be doing to support my career path as a fine artist? So just to make the point, whether you are a fine artist, you're a designer, a hybrid, wherever you fall on that spectrum, networking is for you, and there's a way you can approach it, especially if you think about it as a learning and sharing type of approach. The other really important thing that I want to convey to you tonight is this idea of developing a networking strategy or a networking plan. So networking, when you kind of just think of it as this big beast of like, oh, I've got to start reaching out to professionals, I got to start reaching out to companies, I got to start reaching out to artists that I admire, it can feel daunting and it can kind of be difficult to know where to start. And so what I find to be really helpful is just to start to organize this for yourself. And as you can see, I've got this like sample spreadsheet on the right. You don't have to use a spreadsheet necessarily, but start to create some kind of organized home base where you can start to plan out and map out who you want to engage with, who you want to connect with, who you want to learn from, and then track it, so that you can see what your progress is and know what you have to do and how you need to follow up with people. So as I just said, I think it's helpful to start to kind of identify what are companies or organizations or potentially designers and artists that you want to learn from and want to engage with. So in this example, we've got sort of like company and organization, and this person in this example, they're interested in tech, right? So they've got Google Creative Lab, Microsoft, Amazon, Capital One Labs, and they've just to help themselves out, they've sort of identified the field or industry there. But then right next to that, they're starting to identify, using some tools that we're going to get into later, how to, they're identifying people that work at these entities that they would like to connect with, right? That they've identified as good people that they can reach out to. And in some cases, they're even noting that this person is an alum, right? Maybe this person is an alum from industrial design or digital media or illustration, whatever the case may be. And then they've also sort of identified notes about either prior contact that they've had or next steps that they need to take if they haven't reached out to that person yet, or they want to follow up on a past outreach. And I find that having this kind of spreadsheet really does help you break this up. You can prioritize things and you can keep track of your networking activity, and you can build it up over a period of time. So like it says on the bullet point there on the left-hand side, you can set aside modest time. I know you're incredibly busy, but modest time each week or even each couple of weeks or each month to do some networking research, find people that you want to reach out to, and then actually proactively reach out to them and start to build up these conversations and build up your network in an engaged and active way. So once you've started to cultivate and build this networking plan and start to kind of cultivate a list of people that you might want to target to network with, that begs the question, okay, I've got a list. Now I know I want to reach out to these people, but what do you say, right? And again, this is one of those questions that wherever you're at, whether you're a first year student, first year undergrad, you're a grad student, or you're even an alum, this is a really common question. Everybody wants to know how to do this right because they don't want to be saying anything improper, or they don't want to be wasting anybody's time. I get it. So it's an important question. We're going to talk about it right now. So here are some tips, some kind of basic guidelines that you can take away and incorporate into your own networking outreach. So first rule, in general, you want to keep your email or your message, keep it short and friendly. The truth is, a lot of people are incredibly busy. So keeping your message limited to 1 or 2 short paragraphs that are very focused on introducing yourself and making it clear why you're reaching out, you're going to save everybody time. You're going to make it easier for that person on the other end who's reading it. So definitely keeping it short and also keeping it friendly and upbeat in tone is a good idea. Like I said, in this message, you basically want to briefly introduce yourself, explain how you've come to learn about them. Could be many different ways. You might have found them on LinkedIn. Maybe they were mentioned by faculty in a class that you had, or maybe they're a friend of a friend and you actually know about them, through a mutual acquaintance. Could be a lot of different ways you've come to know them, but explain how you've come to know them, especially if it's not somebody you already know and have a dialogue with. I think this is a key one. Express your enthusiasm for that person's work. Explain why you're excited about what they do and express your enthusiasm for it. And like I said, if you have any shared connections, if they have any mutual people that you're connected through, whether that's an employer or a friend, a classmate, fellow alum, whatever it is, emphasize if you have those shared connections. It's not necessary. You don't necessarily need that, but it can be helpful. This is an important thing. So in this message, I think generally speaking, it's important to kind of portray yourself as a learner and advice seeker. So you want that to be sort of the core of the message. Once you've introduced yourself and explained, how you came across them or, why you're enthusiastic about their work, you want to make this about, I'm seeking to reach out and connect with you because I admire what you do and I want to learn more about what you do. I want to learn more about your background, learn more about what your day-to-day looks like at the studio you work at the company that you work at. But again, the core of it is, I'm a learner, I'm seeking your advice. People generally respond really positively to that. Most people are happy to talk about themselves, talk about the work that they do, share what they're excited about and what they're passionate about in their day-to-day life with other people. So it's a nice, natural way to engage with others. And it's a natural way to kind of start a networking conversation. This is also important. These last 2 bullets are kind of intertwined. You really, in that first message, like I said, you want to keep it short and sweet, but you also want to limit your initial ask to really one thing in that message and keeping it relatively minor. And I actually oftentimes advocate or advise that one thing be asking to maybe follow up and have a deeper conversation. It could happen over email, but I think, in the times that we're living in now, maybe best case scenario is that it's like a phone or Zoom conversation. So asking if they would be open to a phone or Zoom conversation where you can learn more. You can learn from them. You can ask them some questions. That's the ask, right? So what I'm saying about like that one initial ask is you don't want to throw at them and say, hey, I'd love for you to review my portfolio. And could you tell me about internship opportunities at the company that you work at? Oh, and could you also answer some questions I have about what technology is the latest technology that's being used by UI UX professionals, right? You don't want to throw a million questions at them, especially in an introductory message. So just make sure you're limiting it, keeping it small, keeping it efficient. So here's an example. So in this instance, just to kind of give you some context, this example is maybe a sculpture student who has found an alum via LinkedIn. And don't worry, we're going to get into like how to use LinkedIn and the different tools you can use to find people in a little bit. But this example is an alum. Is a senior in sculpture who's found an alum who's got a position working for city government, the city government of Providence, and arts, culture, and tourism. And they feel like there's kind of like a natural connection between what this alum does for a job and what they do as an artist. And so that's kind of the impetus for this outreach. So the student has written, hi, Lynn, I'm a senior at RISD studying sculpture. I found you on LinkedIn, so talking about where they found them. And it was so great to learn that you are a RISD alumni working in the public arts sector for the city of Providence. Most of my work involves interactive installations that engage the public and encourage a sense of community. I would love to connect and chat with you more sometime about creative placemaking and your role at the Providence Arts, Culture, and Tourism. I would love to find ways to help achieve your goals and collaborate. Best, Ramel Rollins. So short, sweet, focused, to the point, expressing enthusiasm for what this person is doing, establishing a little bit of a connection between this person's sculptural installation work and the work that this person does in public art and creative placemaking. And then the limited ask, the small ask, is a chance to follow up and have a chat sometime and explore, mutual intersections and learn more about what this person's role is. And that's it. That's how you do that, that outreach. And again, it's small, short, sweet, to the point. So hopefully what happens next after that kind of an introduction is what is commonly, you've probably heard this term, but just in case you have not, commonly referred to as like an informational interview, right? So that's the follow-on conversation that we were just talking about. So in that instance of that email, the ask was like, hey, can we have a Zoom call or a phone call and a chat? This is that chat, which is oftentimes an informational interview, as I said. So just as some preparation and some tips for how you can prepare for this kind of a conversation, small things you can take away. So in general, you want to have prepared a brief elevator pitch that is just describing you and your work, so that in 1 to 2 minutes maximum, you can explain who you are, what you do creatively, what's unique about your fine art practice, or unique about your design practice, or what are you passionate about when it comes to graphic design or industrial design or furniture design, and how does that manifest in your work, right? Quick little kind of summary and introduction to who you are and what you do. You also, this is key. This is kind of the core of the conversation. You want to come prepared with questions you want to ask. And you can definitely follow up with myself or other advisors at the Career Center if you're kind of stuck for what kind of questions you should be asking. But also, some of this should just come naturally from like, what do you want to learn from this person? Like, what are you curious to learn from this person, given their background, given their experience, given the work that they're doing? That can form the basis for those types of questions that you want to ask. You want to be prepared to show your work. It may not happen in an interview, in an informational interview, but in case they ask or they want to see your work, they're curious to see your portfolio, ideally you want to be prepared to at least show a few examples of your work so that they can kind of see it and get to know it. And then I think these last 2 bullets are really important. So this is the first conversation, but hopefully this has the chance to maybe grow into a lasting connection. Who knows, maybe even a kind of mentorship type of situation if that works for both you and the person. So you absolutely want to make sure that you ask as part of this conversation, is it okay if I follow up with you in the future? Is it okay if I come back with more questions? Or would you mind if I share portfolio pieces that I have with you as I develop my work and get your feedback on it? Because I really admire your opinion and your expertise. So this type of closing, or this type of statement in an interview, informational interview, is really, really important, because it helps this go from just one conversation to potentially more of a lasting conversation. Similar to that idea is, you probably don't want just this one connection to be limited to just this one person. You actually want to maybe think of, how can this one great connection that I've established and this one great conversation that I've had potentially grow into other connections via this person's network. So that's why that last bullet of asking if they have suggestions for people within their organization, or in other organizations that they would recommend that you connect with, maybe they can even introduce you. And again, that those recommendations might be because of your passions and interests within various industries and markets. It might be based on the work that you've shown them. Really depends, but asking for their suggestions of who they can connect you with, or people they would suggest that you follow up with and reach out to. It's really important, because this is a way for you to grow your network just beyond this one individual that you've reached out to and established a connection with. So now, to keep an eye on the time, yeah, doing pretty good. So now I'm going to get into something that I think is really important. And we've kind of talked about the value so far of networking. We've talked about how you can reach out to individuals, and what's kind of the etiquette around networking outreach. But you might be asking yourself, this is all well and good, but how do I find people? Like, how do I find people that I can add to my network? And how do I explore different professional paths and industries? And the good news is, there's a plethora of resources that are available to you. Some of them are even kind of RISD specific. They're sort of right at your doorstep as members of the RISD community. And some of them are external. And we'll talk about all of those right now. So there are more than just these resources, but with the interest of time for tonight, and narrowing down to the ones that I think that tend to be most useful, we're going to talk about LinkedIn, kind of the king of networking platforms. We'll definitely spend a good amount of time on LinkedIn. RISD Network, some of you may or may not be even aware that this exists, so we want to definitely spend some time tonight showcasing that. Similar idea, the RISD alumni groups that exist out there for you to join, especially for the alumni that are here in the audience, as we know that there are. These are good things for you to have on your radar. Instagram, I'm sure many of you know Instagram. I'm sure many of you are even on Instagram already, but I do want to talk a little bit about how you can use Instagram for networking and kind of maximize it. And then this one flies under the radar a little bit, but professional associations. There are hundreds, thousands of professional organizations and associations out there that are built with the sole purpose, they're organized with the sole purpose of supporting people in a given industry or market, and they are key hubs for networking opportunities and connecting with professionals, especially ones that are likely to have similar passions and similar career paths as you, depending on your interests. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that at the end, but that's definitely one that flies under the radar, but is really, really important. So LinkedIn. So many of you, sorry, I'm just going to check the chat real quick. I want to make sure. Good. Awesome. So LinkedIn, many of you, I'm sure, have heard of it. Many of you, I'm sure, have a profile. You're on it. Where I think the kind of dividing line with LinkedIn is a lot of people know about it. A lot of people are on it. Not everybody feels 100% confident in how to use it or why it's valuable. So hopefully, we're going to do a little crash course, because we've got a lot to talk about, but I am going to hopefully kind of show you some key features and resources on LinkedIn that will make you sort of maybe feel better about how to use it moving forward. But the key part of LinkedIn is that it's a way to create a professional profile and share your professional identity with the world. It's a great resource for researching creative industries and career paths. And it is absolutely a key way to network within companies and studios that you may have interest in working for, again, whether you're an artist or a designer. So first, just by the numbers, just kind of like the sheer volume of what LinkedIn provides us, it's pretty incredible. So huge network. 722 million members worldwide, as you can kind of see from the map graphic that's on the screen there. Regardless of where you are from, or regardless of where you are living now, LinkedIn is likely to have some sort of a presence there and provide a online networking platform that you can tap into. So it's just unmatched as far as other professional networking platforms. There's really nothing else quite like it. So it's just by sheer volume, it's certainly worth joining. On the company side, many companies, 50 million of them, have a presence on LinkedIn and have their own company page, which we're going to show a little bit about. But it's a way for them to connect with people. It's a way for them to post opportunities. It's a way for them to also potentially even evaluate people who follow them. So a lot of companies will actually see who follows them on LinkedIn, and their recruiters will sort of peruse that list and see if there are people who may be ideal for positions that they have available. So following companies on LinkedIn is actually a really good idea, because that simple act can actually sort of get you in the queue of people that their recruiters and hiring managers may be paying attention to. Not going to talk too much about this tonight, but it's worth noting that LinkedIn has a pretty massive job board with over 14 million jobs posted annually. I checked tonight, there's 4 million on there right this minute. So pretty robust. It's also nice in that it's a huge range. It's everything from internships to freelance opportunities to full-time jobs. So there's a lot on there to be aware of. The last two, I think, are really the critical ones, the critical stats. So of people surveyed, 74% of users said LinkedIn helped them in researching other people, other professionals, and also companies. It's really an unparalleled and incredible tool when it comes to your ability to learn about people's career paths, or learn about what different positions exist within a company, and then through that, what skill sets are valuable for that position, and how that person got to that position. What was their background? What internships did they have? What jobs did they have before their current position? It's really incredible to be able to see that all in one platform. And then the last one, 94%, almost, really more than 9 in 10 of recruiters are active on LinkedIn. This is their place. The people who make hiring decisions, the talent acquisition, HR professionals, the recruiters, this is where they go. They're not as much on Facebook or Twitter or any of these other social media platforms. Instagram may be a little bit of an exception that we'll get into, but this is where they spend most of their time, and this is where they find talent. So it makes sense for you to have a presence on here. So just to quickly run through the portfolio. So if you're going to be on LinkedIn, not portfolio, profile. If you're going to be on LinkedIn, you need to have a profile. It's kind of an important base element that you need. And we're going to talk about some key things, and I'm going to show you. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, Nicholas Cole, who's an alum, freelance illustrator, character designer, and we're just going to use Nick's profile as an example. Not that Nick's profile is 100% perfect necessarily, but there's some great things happening on here that I want to share with you for sure. One of those things is just thinking through a tagline. So in this case, as you can see, it's kind of the orange arrow pointing there, but Nick is calling himself a character designer and illustrator. So what kind of professional, what kind of artist and designer do you want to be known as? And thinking through that a little bit. If you're a current student, it's totally okay for you to just kind of own that for right now and just sort of say, like, I am a sculpture student at RISD or whatever it is. That's okay. You may need time to kind of figure out what sort of professional you want to be, but it's good to have a tagline there that at least is a little specific to your goals and how you see yourself creatively. The other thing that you want to do is create a summary that highlights your main skills, highlights the things that you're passionate about, the types of industries or types of creative work that you want to be doing. So this kind of verbal summary that you see here with Nick, where he's kind of talking, again, he's talking a little bit about the fact that he is involved in comics, character design, does some children's book illustration. So he's kind of highlighting the key parts of illustration that he works in. But also, and this is something that I really think all artists and designers need to do, and unfortunately not all do this on LinkedIn, show your work. There's a featured work category in the LinkedIn profile where you can there's a couple things you can do. You can upload links to your portfolio, which is definitely wise to do. You can also, if your work has ever been like featured, in online articles or in online exhibitions or in press in some way, awesome, you can link to that. But what you're seeing Nick do here is you can actually upload media too. You can actually upload images. So Nick kind of uses this as like a preview of his portfolio, where you can actually click on these images and they'll enlarge on the page and you can see a preview of his work. It's a golden opportunity. If you've got people on your LinkedIn page, take advantage. You have a captive audience right there. Make sure they're seeing your work. Unfortunately, far too few people utilize this in the creative world, I feel like. Just like on your resume, you want to have a section for your experience where you talk about the places that you've worked. And again, give yourself a little bit of a break if you're a younger student. You know, it's okay if some of these things are like work study jobs or jobs that you've worked, off campus that are not necessarily connected to art and design. That's okay. You got to start somewhere. But this will build up over time and you'll start to populate this with more maybe relevant art and design experiences. This is also a really great thing. So LinkedIn also has this recommendations feature where people you have worked with or worked for in the past can actually write quick little, usually like a paragraph or less, little recommendations that talk about how great it was to work with you and how talented you are. And Nick's really good at this. Nick has like, I think over 20 of these, if I remember right. Now, Nick's been working professionally for 10 plus years. He's been able to cultivate this over time. Don't feel like you need 20 recommendations, but even if you can just get one where you've worked with somebody maybe through an internship or on a collaborative project, even through school, that's gold. Because what these recommendations show is that you're easy to work with, you're talented, you're good to work with, and somebody else is sort of vouching for you and saying that you're a good collaborator. And at the end of the day, that's a lot of what professional work is about. It's about being a good collaborator and being able to work with others towards a creative end goal. And so these recommendations, again, even if you can just get one or two, when people are visiting your profile, it really speaks volumes. Similar to this is the skills section and the endorsements feature. So what you're seeing here on Nick's profile is that he's got these top skills of illustration, concept art, and animation, and then some other skills listed below. And what the number next to that, like the 134 next to illustration, for example, that's the number of people that have endorsed Nick for that skill. And so similar to the recommendations, if you've got a ton of endorsements for a key skill that you want to utilize in the markets that you're interested in working in, that also is validating to recruiters and others who are considering hiring you, that a lot of people are vouching for that skill set. And what is kind of nice, you're seeing this in Nick's, is for any of the illustration students that are out there, some of the people that are vouching for Nick's ability with illustration are actual faculty members too, who are sort of saying like, yeah, I know Nick's work and he's an accomplished, talented illustrator. So it's not just the amount of endorsements that you get, it also can be the people that endorse you too. Just a quick note on endorsements, the way that those work on LinkedIn is it's reciprocal. So if you endorse other people for skills that they have, LinkedIn will actually prompt that individual to potentially do the same for you. They don't have to, but that's sort of the feature. That's how that works. So it's like a reciprocal tool. So if you endorse other people, they'll be more likely to endorse you. Another feature of LinkedIn, I think that goes a little underutilized that I want to highlight is the RISD, or the school page in general. We'll talk about the RISD school page because this is a RISD audience, of course, and the ability that you have to explore alumni through this. So you can actually go on LinkedIn, and if you type in Rhode Island School of Design in the search bar, the school itself has a page and that will show up in your results. And if you click on that and then you click on alumni, as you're seeing here, it actually kind of takes you to this page where it's showing you all of the alumni that are on LinkedIn, all of the RISD alumni that are on LinkedIn. And it's kind of cool because it's an interactive sort of graph that you can kind of play with. So you're sort of seeing, you can see where are the most popular locations where people live, what are the most popular companies that they're working at. You can also narrow this down even further and say, what sort of markets or industries or job functions do they work in? So what you're seeing there, sort of like education, arts and design, business development, media, etc. I really like the one that's there on the right, which is you can even break it down by major. So you can say, what major did they have or what did they study? And then it will refine the results from there. So for this example that I'm showing you right now, I actually did industrial design as the major. And then if you scroll down that page, it'll actually show you sample profiles of RISD alumni from industrial design. And it'll show you who they are and where they're working. And you're one click away from going to visit that person's profile and then potentially connecting with them. Again, like we had shown before, using a little message, a short, sweet message, reaching out and explaining why you're connecting. So this school page with the alumni feature, I think is really fun to play with. And depending on your major, depending on what cities or regions or countries you're interested in working, it can be a cool way to play with the uh, LinkedIn features and what's available. Another feature on LinkedIn that I encourage you all to take advantage of is the RISD alumni group that's on LinkedIn. So there are all kinds of groups on LinkedIn. Some of them are connected to schools, some of them are connected to industries. But the one, if you're not a part of it already, the one that I would really recommend that you take some time to connect with and explore is the RISD alumni group. It's the largest RISD alumni group out there with over 10,000 people in it. That represents about 1/3 of that 30,000 total. So it's a huge number of people in just that one group. You also have the ability, once you are a member, to search all the different members. You can search by different filters like industry or companies that they work at. And it's also a place where people share information. So as you're kind of seeing on the screen here, people actually post about opportunities. In general, RISD alumni want to hire other RISD alumni, or they'd like the chance to if they can. So this is a place where you can sometimes see opportunities posted as well. So just by being a member of this group and seeing the conversations that happen on this group, you might even come across opportunities that are relevant to you, like you're seeing there. So this group is it's an easy thing. It's one click away. You can get to this group actually through our website on our networking page. There's sort of an invite link that you can click to join the group. And I really encourage that you do it, because you'll immediately have sort of expanded your network by 10,000 other RISD alumni simply by joining this group. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Last thing to say about LinkedIn, but definitely not a small thing, is the company pages and how those can be a way for you to really network within studios, especially target studios that you're really keen on potentially working for. So we're using sort of Gensler as the example here. So Gensler's page, you can kind of see it. This is what like Gensler's LinkedIn page looks like on a mobile device. But what I really like about this is there's some useful basic information, so you can kind of get a sense of like the company size and what their specialties are. So you can get a feel for some nice data and information that kind of helps you better get acquainted with the company. But the piece of this that I really like is this people tab. So if you click on that, it will show you literally every employee who works for that company who has a LinkedIn profile, but you can search with advanced filters and just narrow that down to find the RISD alumni who are working at that company. And in this case, what's really cool is just by doing that one click, we are now seeing a list of 58 RISD alumni who work in various roles at Gensler. And now I've got a nice kind of tight list of people that I can consider reaching out to and building relationships with if Gensler is a place that I really maybe want to work one day and if I'm sort of keen on working there. If nothing else, I can go and check out and explore their profiles and learn about their skill set and learn about their own background to see how they made their way to get a position at Gensler at my target company. So even if you don't use it to make outreach to people, which I think you should, there's still a wealth of information that you can take advantage of. Pivoting away from LinkedIn now, excuse me, I also want to talk about something that's relatively new on the scene, and that's the RISD network. So the RISD network is a fairly new, I think it was launched last year, fairly new online platform. It's exclusive to RISD, so you must be a current student or an alum to access this. And it's an entire platform that's built for networking and built for mentorship and potential mentorship relationships as well. So it's there for you to be able to engage in career-related conversations and networking with if you're an alum, with other RISD alums, or if you're a student with RISD alums, and to gain knowledge and advice and explore potential career paths. So the easiest way to think about this, we just talked about LinkedIn. This is actually kind of like a smaller LinkedIn that's just specific to the RISD community, which is actually really cool when you think about it. It's a smaller, you're going to find a smaller group of people on here, but this is newer, and so it is definitely growing. It's growing every day, and there's a great community, I think, of almost 2,000 people that are already a part of this platform, and that's likely to continue to grow. But the thing I like about this is the platform does make automatic suggestions for you. So if you kind of fill out your profile and talk about what you're studying and what industry you're in, it will actually make automatic suggestions for you of RISD alums that you can connect with. But you can go beyond that and explore the community, as you're seeing on the screen here. And you can say, I am curious to find RISD alums who have industry experience in X. And in this case, just for the demo here, I've selected animation, and it will then pull back results of those people. And I might find somebody like Christian Evans, who's an alum who's actually the CG animation director for SpongeBob SquarePants at Nickelodeon Animation Studio. So really, really cool, right? We have an alum on this like major animated TV show that's been going strong for years now. And maybe you wouldn't have never have known this, right? If you weren't on the RISD network kind of playing around. So I can go to Christian's profile. I can learn more about when did they graduate and from what department, in this case, illustration 2001. But it's also nice because it shows what's Christian willing to help with. So it's willing to talk with people about general advice in networking, offer resume and CV critique. And even if you're interested in starting a new career in animation, he can offer help with that. The really nice next piece that the RISD network does is you can say, okay, I want to message Christian, and it will actually give you these templates that you can choose from and then sort of customize and tweak. So in this example, I've chosen the career exploration template, and it gives you essentially like what's some good etiquette and solid language you can use to reach out to somebody to ask about their career path as a CG animation director and learning more about how they got to their position that they're in now. I do recommend tweaking it a little bit. You know, you can still customize this, and I do recommend, still, tailoring this to what you're interested in learning about. But it's especially for somebody who's like unsure of what to write in a message like this. This is a great way to sort of dip your feet into networking, and I think super, super helpful. And this is all just built right within the platform. On this same token of kind of what's there for RISD, what's like a RISD specific tool that you can utilize. The RISD network is one of those things that you should definitely take advantage of. But also the RISD Institutional Engagement and Alumni Relations Office has also done a fabulous job of creating and supporting alumni groups that are based on regional groups that are based on where our alumni live in the world and where they're working, and also what they call industry affinity groups, which are built around specific industries that our alums go and work in after graduation. So this is a great way for you to connect with alums either in certain cities that you may want to be working in, or in certain industries that you aspire to work in or are currently working in. So as you can see on the alumni website, which is just alumni.risd.edu, they have a full listing of the various US cities and regions that have these alumni clubs ready for you to tap into, as well as even international locations as well, which is great because as we know, we have a fantastic and large international population of students at RISD, and thus have a fantastic and large population of RISD alum who are internationally based. And it's great to know that these clubs exist for them as well. On the flip side, apart from just kind of regionally based clubs, there are these industry specific clubs, and these are also growing all the time as well. And you can see they're really cutting across a variety of industries, and even things like that are broad that are not kind of specific to a discipline or a major, like RISD alumni who are interested and engaged in social impact, or RISD alumni who are engaged in sustainability and zero waste economies, or RISD alumni who have aspirations or are founders and entrepreneurs, like things that are not even specific industries, but are just about sort of like what are types of careers that you want to pursue. And these are great ways to get connected to other alums who are doing this work already, who want to share advice, who want to collaborate, who want to work with each other on these types of projects. It's a really, really amazing way to build your network and maintain a lasting RISD community once you, while you're in school even, and certainly once you leave. The last thing I'll say about alumni groups too is keep an eye on your email, especially if you're an alum, your RISD alumni email, but students are also being alerted about a lot of these as well. And that's that the Alumni Relations Office is doing a great job of also putting on webinars where alumni, where essentially with alumni panels, where they're talking about their expertise or their advice in certain, career paths or industries. And they just had this one. This happened at the end of January, but this alumni panel was based all around advice on how to get started in your career during the challenging time of this pandemic, and sort of offering advice and tips for how you can make the most of it even during these difficult circumstances. So take advantage of these things. They're all there. They're free for you as either a student or an alum. And these are networking opportunities. These are chances for you to get connected with alums and potentially reach out after those webinars and strike up a conversation. So this is all a part of the networking package. Now, kind of pivoting away from sort of close to home RISD things, something that, again, I'm sure many, if not all of you are familiar with, and that's Instagram. So Instagram, I think if you use it right, is absolutely an additional networking tool. For one, it's a visually driven platform, right? It's all about sharing images. So it's perfect for artists and designers in that sense. It's sort of modus operandi is exactly built for visual creators like all of us are. The other thing that's great about it is it has tremendous reach. It's the fourth most used app of any application, not like just of social media applications, of any application. So many people are on it and are using it every day. It just has incredible, tremendous reach. The other thing is art directors and creators and curators, I should say, really do love it. And they really do find talent via Instagram. I've heard numerous stories over the years. I've been doing this for, oh gosh, almost 10 years at this point. I just kind of realized that, but I've been doing this job for almost 10 years, and it's flying by, but it's awesome. But over those 10 years, I've heard stories from students and alums where they have literally, their work has been discovered by curators and other people for shows and exhibitions via Instagram. Like, it absolutely happens. And so I think it's one of those things where if you're using it right, it truly is a chance for you to advance your career, gain exposure, and to connect and network. It might look a little bit different from the way you do it on LinkedIn, but it's still a tool nonetheless. So I want to just kind of offer some quick tips on this and just kind of show an example of an alum who's doing this right, somebody we referenced earlier, in fact. So a couple of thoughts here. I do think in general for social media, but for Instagram, you want to kind of develop a personalized plan for yourself. So you're not just kind of like posting content willy-nilly, but you've actually got like a thought process and a strategy behind it. So one of those things is to follow the quote unquote right people. And I put that in quotes because there's no standard group of right people. It depends on your industry. So if you are a fine artist who has studio, kind of gallery exhibition aspirations, it makes sense for you to follow galleries that you admire and follow curators and even other artists that you admire on Instagram, so that you become a part of their community. They see your posts and your work is sort of showing up in those circles. If you're a furniture designer, it may make sense to follow notable and quality interior designers so that your furniture might be selected and placed in spaces by them, for example. If you're an architect, follow architecture firms that you admire. If you're a filmmaker or a video editor, maybe find and follow some production companies that are producing work that's really compelling and seems like it fits your aesthetic. So that's what I mean when I say follow the right people. Don't just let Instagram be this is like my friends and my family are following me. That's fine. That's cool. That's useful. But be intentional about who you follow in the community you try to keep and be strategic about it. Following that line of thought, if you just post and leave it at that, you're kind of at the mercy of the LinkedIn algorithms and just how far the reach of your network is. But if you are very active on Instagram and you engage and communicate, and by that we mean like other people's photos and work, comment on their photos and work, and also comment on your own work, and direct message and engage with others. The way that the Instagram algorithm works, the more engaged you are with other people's work and the more engaged you are with your own work and that people are engaged with your own work, the more conversations and likes that are happening around that, it's going to boost its visibility in the totality of Instagram and up the chances that that right art director or that right curator or that right interior designer is going to see your piece, and that's going to be the beginning of a potential conversation that yields fruit for you in your career. So being active and engaged on Instagram is really critical. You also want to use hashtags. It's a visibility tool. It allows your work to be seen when people are searching by specific hashtags. So those hashtags could be around the type of artwork that you make, the content or themes of the work, the tools that you're using to create it, software, etc. There's actually a lot written online about useful hashtags for artists and designers that you can actually, if you're really stumped for what hashtags you might be using, there's actually a ton out there when you just Google it. One thing I'll say about hashtags real quick is, in general, good advice, you want to kind of find the middle ground, meaning you don't necessarily want to choose the most used hashtags because your work might get drowned out in that sea. So like artists of Instagram, there's a ton of people who use that hashtag. Your work may or may not get seen because so many people are using it. On the contrary, you also don't want to pick like a super obscure hashtag that only you are using because nobody's going to be searching for that. So you want to try to find a middle ground of something that has good visibility, but is maybe not like the top hashtag that's being used for artists and designers. I know it's a little bit blurry, but I think that's generally a good guidepost. And you also want to just develop a consistent schedule. You don't have to post every day, but consider posting weekly, every couple of days, and also vary your content. I think one of the cool things about how artists and designers can effectively use Instagram is to be able to vary their content, meaning show finished work, but also show process work. Maybe even show some videos that are of you creating the work in your studio using different tools or sketching out a potential idea. So use it as a way to kind of showcase a window into how you work in your creative life. Doesn't have to be just finished images of your work. So I think that people like Instagram for that. It can give them a kind of a personal connection to the artists and designers that they follow. And I think somebody who's using Instagram effectively is Marley. So in fact, Marley's talked a lot about how so much of her freelance practice was generated and cultivated from using social media and specifically Instagram consistently and well. And you can kind of just see here, she really does do a good job of showing a range. Like some of this is obviously connected to her work. Some of it is just kind of sketches and process and just sort of like creative inspiration. And some of it is just personal pictures and pictures that she's showing that are about her, not even necessarily connected to the work, but that she wants to share with the world. The other thing that I think Marley does as good as anybody I've seen, and you're seeing it with this piece, is everything she posts feels very personal. It feels like she's connected and she's kind of giving you a little bit of a narration as to why she's posting that or what it means to her. But also you see Marley almost always comment on her own and react to people's comments. So she will share appreciation when people say thanks. She will talk about what she was thinking about, in this case, like how she wanted to play with warm and cool lighting. She engages. She uses Instagram to engage with the people who are engaging with her work. And it makes a huge difference. It absolutely ups the exposure for Marley's work, but it also makes it come across as like authentic and real. And I think that that's a really cool takeaway. And definitely following Marley and kind of seeing how she's using Instagram, I think is a good idea, especially if you're an illustrator. So last kind of resource or tool that you can use. I know we're kind of running a little late here, but this is a quickie but a biggie. Definitely start to explore the world of professional associations. So professional associations are very simply just organizations and communities of professionals that are set up to support people who are working in a given field or industry. They're all across art and design. They tend to be hubs of information and valuable resources, and definitely hubs for networking opportunities and ways to connect with others. So what you're seeing actually there, the example on the screen, is a conference called Where Are All the Black People? And it was set up, it's put on by the One Club for Creativity, and it was basically created because professionals in the advertising industry realized that, like, hey, we've got a problem. We're not being as diverse and inclusive as we need to be, and we need to support creative people of color and make sure that they have a pathway to get into our industry. And so the community sort of rallied around that idea and actually created a conference all about supporting that community and trying to help them have pathways to work within creative advertising, and you know, provide inspiration as well, and showcase people who already were succeeding in that way. And that's just a great example of a professional association putting on a conference, recently done virtually. These can happen either way. And these are things that you can access as a student or an alum that can put you in that valuable sphere of like-minded professionals that can build your network and provide valuable connections for you. So this is like the smallest morsel and taste of the professional associations that are out there, but I just wanted to kind of give you a quick sense. So I mentioned the One Club, especially, you know, for graphic design and advertising. It's a great one. Climate Designers is a new one on the scene that there are some RISD connections to, but for any type of creative or designer who's interested in applying their skills to climate change and sustainability, great organization to potentially connect with. American Craft Council, so for any of the craft disciplines in fine arts, where we're talking about ceramics, glass, textiles, woodworking and furniture, jewelry, so on and so forth. It's an organization set up for artists like you. They provide show opportunities, they provide networking opportunities, grants, really cool organization. POW Arts, or Professional Women in the Arts, is what it sounds like. It's an organization set up to support women who are working in the fine art world and as arts administrators. They do amazing work. They have networking, very free and open networking events pretty regularly. They put out salary information so that people can educate themselves on salary. Really awesome stuff. Architects may already be familiar with the American Institute of Architects, same deal. Tons of great information, job boards, networking opportunities, webinars, all good stuff. American Photographic Artists, last but not least, really good to know about. They actually offer, like, for photographers, even offer like discounts on purchasing software and equipment. So that's another good reason it can be good to connect with professional associations. And also, like, they have a directory too, where you can find other photographers, and also you could add yourself to the directory so that clients can find you and potentially hire you for work as well. So just a small taste. The one thing I will say, if you want to learn more about professional associations, which I definitely encourage you to do, our website in our internships and jobs section has a page with resources for all of the majors at RISD. And on that page, on the right-hand column, are professional associations that are relevant to that specific major. So it's a good way for you to kind of start to explore this. So thank you for bearing with me. I know this has been a whirlwind tour of networking, but I do want to offer some quick parting thoughts, and then we'll answer a few questions if we have some. So networking, develop a plan. Remember, think about this strategically. Think back to that spreadsheet we had. Start to think about what organizations, be they design, fine art, somewhere in between, what organizations do you admire, might you want to work with, and start to develop a plan for how you might network within those organizations. Be curious. Let your passions and interests drive this. So let your natural instincts sort of guide you to the types of people you want to talk to, the types of organizations you want to learn more about, just let your own kind of what you're, learning about in school and what projects you're getting excited by, let be that your inner compass. And you're likely, if you do that, you're likely to enjoy networking. It's likely to lead you in directions that are going to be fulfilling and inspiring. Be fearless. I think this one is just like, everybody has that voice in the back of their head that's sort of like, oh, I don't want to bother this person, or oh, what if they think I'm lame for reaching out and asking this question? Like, everybody's got that doubter, right? That self-doubter. Mine, like, I have that. I'm honestly probably one of the worst with that. My advice to you is, like, shut that down. Just in general, try, when it comes to networking, try to ignore that. I mean, of course you want to be polite and you want to do this the right way, but I would encourage you to be fearless in reaching out to people and really trying to expand your network and learn from other professionals. Because as we've learned from the stats, the more of these valuable relationships you build, chances are it's going to be, tangibly beneficial in your career path as far as access to opportunities and further. Lastly, just be you. So what I mean by that is, even though I've hopefully offered some good principles and strategies and takeaways for networking, at the end of the day, you've got to do this in a way that feels authentic and real to you. You have to do this in a way that is, that is true to you and that you can manage. So the way I kind of think about this is, it's not necessarily a numbers game. It's not about who has the most networking connections. It truly is more quality over quantity, and it truly is more about, even if you have a handful of really close, valuable mentors and networking connections, but those people are really inspirational and crucial in your career development, that's just as good as the person who's got, 500 connections on LinkedIn, but is not really doing anything with those connections, right? So it's all relative, and you've got to do it in a way that makes sense for you and that you can manage. So just be you and do you, and it will all work out. And of course, we as an office, myself, all of my amazing collaborators at the Career Center, Alan Tracy included, we are all here to back you up and help you out and answer your questions. Speaking of, if there are a handful of questions, I think we can maybe take at least a few minutes here to tackle some of them. Sound good?
Sounds good, Scott. We're ready. I've got some
Awesome.
good ones lined up. If you want to stop sharing your screen there.
You got it. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, go for it.
Scott, if I may, I'm going to head straight in and just recognize that a couple of people have asked about specifically where is the RISD network found, and I'm pardon me, just letting everybody know I'm dropping the 4 links that Scott was referring to. I just dropped them in the chat, so you can just copy those and paste them into a document and hold off. You can hold them for later. So, but just wanted to answer that right off the bat, just in case anybody's got to grab them and go. So Scott, nice job. And I was glad to be here when you discovered you were here for about 10 years. That was a nice moment there. So I'm gonna start off with an early question, Scott. And it was when you were talking about, physical networking, like in the very early part of your presentation.
Yep.
So Robert has asked, so if the overwhelming number of percentage of jobs are gotten through networking, then, and Robert's suggesting maybe he wasted his 20 years of his life dropping off his photo portfolio at ad agencies and magazines, and he should have been taking his art directors out for martinis. So I just wanted to give you a chance to address this, and if you want any backup on that, I've got a few thoughts too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, absolutely, Alan. If you want to offer your thoughts, I'd say 100% go for it. I mean, my thought is, I think any good job search is a balanced one, or any approach to job searching is a balanced one, meaning that you want to be doing a mix of things. You definitely still want to be applying to things. You still want to be finding opportunities that are posted online or in other places and throwing your hat in the ring for them. It's not like you want to abandon that activity, but at the same time, if you're limiting it to just that, and you're not actively engaging and communicating with people and striking up authentic relationships, with other professionals that are relevant to your career path, then you're only doing one part of the equation, right? So the idea, I do try to kind of think about it almost as like an equation or almost as a spectrum, and your job as the job seeker is to try to fill up as much of that spectrum as you can with applying to things that are relevant to you, but also being proactive in trying to build up your network and engage with people, even when there may not be that perfect job at that company, or there may not be that perfect, freelance opportunity that's available to you. Like, you want to be proactive and take control of the situation and try to strike up those relationships. And the phrase kind of being like, make your own luck, right? You want to kind of make your own luck as best you can. And so that's kind of the way I think about it, when it's about finding balance and making sure that you're taking care of the parts of the equation that you can control. That's my thought. But Alan, feel free.
Right on. No, Scott, the only thing I would add is, I would think that, Robert, when you dropped off those photo portfolios at ad agencies and magazines, that must have been networking as well. I mean, the martinis might be one version of networking with the art directors, but every time you walked in the door, you were making a connection, like you were building relationships with the people you started to know at these places. So that was all, part of what Scott's talking about today.
Totally.
Okay.
Agreed. 100%.
Cool. So, so I'm gonna move on to a couple of other things. We've got a shout out, just for the record. We've got a shout out to Scott and Where All the Black People conference and events, and there's a couple of people that are upvoting that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
It's an awesome conference.
Yeah, for sure. So getting back to the questions, Ra would like to know, would you ever consider dropping your phone number in an introductory email if your ask is for further conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's some of that's just like your own kind of personal privacy, instincts there. But I think that that's totally appropriate. What a lot of people will do actually, in their email, and I don't believe this was actually shown in the example that I had shown, so maybe a missed opportunity there, but a lot of people will have a professional, what's known as a professional signature. So it's just, they would have their name, they'd say sincerely, Ramel Rollins, or whatever your name is. And then you would have your contact info, and that might include ideally a link to your online portfolio so that it's easy for people to see your work if they're so inclined. And then your email, even though you're emailing, it's just helpful to have that email there so people can, do a copy paste if they need to for some reason, and potentially your phone number. Again, that's kind of your call as to whether you want your phone out there kind of in the email universe. But it's certainly good to kind of present that option, right? Because then if they would like to follow up with you that way, they have that ability, right? You're just kind of making it easy on them to follow up with you. So it's a little bit of as a personal privacy thing, but I think a professional signature where you offer the ways that people can kind of engage with you and your work is a nice way to handle that.
Great, thank you, Scott. So Kira asks, when you're in college, so in your college career, would you recommend getting on LinkedIn, which you, emphatically later in the presentation said yes. Also, any advice for things to ask people, any advice for things to ask people specifically if you want to work somewhere in the future, but aren't looking to work there quite yet? So like if you're trying to build those relationships for the long haul, but you might be a freshman or sophomore and you're still trying to figure out what you want to do, how do you really go for the long haul?
Yeah, those are both great questions. So the first part, I think you can consider joining, LinkedIn right off the bat, and I would start, your profile is going to grow and evolve. It's not a static thing. And certainly as you gain more studio experience and potentially internships and things like that, you'll have more to add to your profile. But I would consider doing it honestly as early as your first year. And again, knowing that it might, improve and change over time, but that profile will allow you to use LinkedIn and some of those features we were talking about, where you can do some research on companies and look at people's career paths. So you can kind of, if you want, you can kind of be in stealth mode at first, where maybe you're not doing a ton of outreach, and so people are not, there's not a ton of eyes on your profile if you're a little self-conscious about it, but you can still actually use LinkedIn to do some really cool research. So that's one thing on the when to kind of have a profile. I would say sooner rather than later, basically. I think the other, I'm sorry, Alan, what was the second part of that question? I lost it. It was, I remember. So if you're not ready to, ask about, apply for jobs or start working at a company yet, but you want to start, engaging with people who work at that company, I think you definitely should do that. And I think one of the questions you could talk to them about is like, what are some examples of the positions that exist at that company? Or in other words, like if you're a graphic designer, what are the roles and positions and projects that graphic designers are working on at that company? How are they represented at that company? So you can learn about the potential paths within that company specifically, or within that marketplace. And you can do that for any major and any kind of company. You can ask about what work looks like at that company, what kind of projects they're working on, and even what skill sets they typically look for when they're hiring. Because even though you may not be ready to hire now, or may not be ready to apply now, if you learn about the skill sets that they're looking for, that might actually even inform classes that you take, or skills that you learn on your own online, right? It might even inform how you model your education. Maybe not, but it's good to have. I'd rather have that knowledge than not. So that's the way I would handle that, if that helps.
Great, thank you, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of really good questions. How many more do we have time for?
Let's maybe do two more. I don't want to keep people beyond 8:30 if we can avoid it. So
okay,
maybe two.
Cool.
Does that sound good?
Yep, thank you. So what if you've reached out to a company? This is a great question. Melanie asks, what if you have reached out to a company and or person to try and connect, but they don't respond? I'm all for being friendly and being persistent, but if they don't respond repeatedly, like when do you give up on that?
Yeah, it is a great question. And unfortunately, this does happen. Like I'd love to sit here and pretend that we live in a world where every single networking outreach you make is going to be enthusiastically responded to. Unfortunately, people are people, and we live in a world where that's not the case. I think most people will respond, but I'd say generally write that first message, do that first outreach. It is 100% appropriate for you to then follow up another time. If you haven't heard in like a week or two, couple weeks, follow up again. Just politely say, hey, just reaching out, wondering if you had seen my last email. I'd really love the opportunity to connect with you and get to learn more about what you're doing. Quick follow up. And then if you haven't heard anything after that, I think you can probably kind of cut ties, at that point, and just kind of say like, what, I did what I could. I've been proactive. For whatever reason, maybe this person's really busy or they're not able to respond right now. So I definitely encourage you to follow up and be politely persistent. But one follow up, maybe max two, and then I would probably press pause on that one and move on to other options.
Thank you, Scott. And so I'm going to go with the last question. Nancy suggests this is a delicate question. When approaching a potential contact, how do you avoid the notion that you might become competition for them at the company or gallery, et cetera? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good question. I think that that depends on where you are in your career a little bit and who you're reaching out to. So one of the things you can consider on that is if you are reaching out to people that are a little bit more seasoned or experienced, or if it's in a company that are in a slightly higher role than the type of position that you're seeking, that takes away some of that, right? Because if that person's in a slightly more experienced or seasoned position than you, they're not likely to be as intimidated or consider you as a potential threat. I think that potential threat can kind of come in when you're reaching out to peers who are working in positions that are the positions that you potentially want to work for. That's where that kind of starts to get cloudy. So one of those things you can think about is, what's this person's role? Are they in a more senior role than I am? And that the advantage there is that person might be able to give you, kind of based upon their experience and also based upon the fact that they might be offering yeah, they might be managing people for the types of jobs that you're pursuing. They're able to kind of give you really good insight because they're essentially kind of in management roles for the types of opportunities that you're applying for. So that's one way to kind of avoid that. That is a really delicate thing. And that is something that you can run into if you're reaching out to people that are on your peer level, and you're asking about, positions at that peer level, that are essentially like their position, that they could take that the wrong way. Doesn't always happen, but that is a little bit of a risk. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, you're doing great, Scott. So, there's only 2 more questions left. Should we just go in there and, oh,
Sure.
should we just, maybe if anybody wants to stick around for these last 2.
Sure.
So, because they're good questions, and I want to just,
Sure.
if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So, you know what, I'm just gonna answer straight out. So Madison's asking, if you'd like to connect with an artist, but they only have a general contact page on their website, do you think it's appropriate to reach out to them to introduce yourself? And I started to type an answer and something happened. So what I was typing was,
Yeah.
absolutely, just
Yeah.
go for it.
100%.
If that is the only contact info you can find, like, you should just dig into it and go there, because the worst thing is they don't respond. The best thing is you make a connection. So I'm just gonna
Ditto.
answer that one straight out. And then
Ditto.
Scott, I'm gonna serve this one up to you, Coralie, if I'm saying that properly, I hope so. Before posting portfolio photos on the internet, should we watermark them so that they are not lifted or misused? And that'll be the last question.
Yeah, so this is a tricky thing. And I, first of all, will say I am not a lawyer, so this is getting into legal territory, but I'll give you what I have heard about this. So I think doing that is certainly a good idea, in the sense that it can maybe dissuade people from who are, would think about maybe copying the work and using it without your permission. It could act as a little bit of a hey, wait, don't do that. Or like, for some people are just maybe ignorant and they don't realize that, like, oh, I don't have the copyright to use this. So it could be like oh wait, I can't just use this image, right? So it's helpful, but it's we actually just had a conversation about this, with a lawyer named Greg Kanan, who's a RISD alum, who offers legal advice to creatives of all kinds. Little plug for Greg and the Legal Artist. That's their website. If you ever want to check out Greg, go to thelegalartist.com. And he does have a blog where he talks about issues like this and would honestly speak about it much more confidently than I would. But it's a little bit of a protection, but people can still lift your images online, and they can still use them, or they can try to use them illegally. Like, it does happen. It's very difficult to have a 100% protection against that. So I think it's a good idea, a watermark that kind of does give people a hesitation, and hopefully acts as a little bit of a barrier, but you may not be able to guard against it 100%. But I don't think that risk, like, while that is a risk and it's a problem, I don't think that means you should not post things online. I think it just, like, this day and age, you need to have work online, and it's really important for you to get exposure and to gain opportunities. So, like, finding little protections is definitely a good idea. And of course, you can sue people if they use your work without authorization, but that can be timely and costly. And so there's a whole kind of can of worms there. But hopefully that was a helpful response. Alan, if you have any thoughts, of course.
If I can just throw in one tiny thought too, when you're posting them on the internet, these files don't have to be huge. If you post up the largest files that they can handle, then it's actually easier to take it and make it bigger and actually is more useful to somebody. Where if you post the images on the most minimal size, but they're still clear and they still show up on platforms that you're interested in across platforms, whether it's mobile devices or a desktop computer, you could protect yourself a little bit by making it like a little less of a file to work with. Small, but everything has to help. And that was the last, I think that was the last question we've got, right?
Yep,
Scott?
I think
we're
so.
We're good there.
Yep.
So if you want to close us out.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for those questions, and thanks to everybody who has attended tonight. I hope again, I know that was a kind of fast-paced crash course, but I hope that that gave you some parting thoughts and some good takeaways about how you can incorporate networking into your own creative professional life. Again, thank you again. The last thing I would just say is whether you are a student or an alum, the RISD Career Center is a resource for you. Reach out to us, go to our website, email us, get in touch with us any way you need to, and we will be here to help. So with that said, thank you all again. Take care and have a good night.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Bye-bye.